Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael and Dude, who's laying on my foot, for this Wednesday morning, March the 3rd, 2021. Today, we aren't talking yet about meditating on Scripture. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Today, we are talking about Embertide or Ember Days, as was a question asked of me by a parishioner. So I thought, you know what? If I have to go and look this up, probably other people aren't really as aware of it either. So if you know more than me, please fill me in. This is not something they covered in seminary. So there's the things from before I was ordained that they should have covered, and things we anticipated after ordination that we didn't cover. So didn't cover YouTube and Zoom meetings and how to take your worship online when I was in seminary in the mid-90s. And they didn't also in the mid-90s, they were beyond the BCP. So they didn't teach us about things like Ember Days. So I'm learning as I go as well. So Ember Days here, I've got my little cheat sheets here, my notes. Ember Days are considered to be days of solemn prayer. And they are found in the 4 seasons of the year. So winter, spring, summer, and fall. And they seem to be more specific to the Book of Common Prayer. Ember Days are mentioned as an opportunity, and there is a collect for Ember Days in the Book of Alternative Services, but Ember Days are specifically set aside in the Book of Common Prayer lectionary in the daily readings. It says here that in the Book of Alternative Services, they are to be used at times of prayer for the whole ministry of the church. So the Ember Days are Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday after the 3rd Sunday in Advent. So about a week and a half to 2 weeks before Christmas. In the spring, it is after the 1st Sunday in Lent. In the Book of Common Prayer, the Sundays that happen during Lent are referred to as Sundays in Lent. In the Book of Alternative Services, the Sundays are referred to as the Sundays of Lent. So not entirely sure why the difference, but for some people that means a big deal. In the summer, it is after Pentecost or Whitsunday, and I'll explain that later. And that is 50 days after Easter. And then in the fall, they happen on the Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday after Holy Cross Day, which is always celebrated on September 14th, which happens to be my parents' wedding anniversary. So if I get to Holy Cross Day and do my daily office and get caught by it, it means I forgot to send my parents their anniversary card. So originally under Pope Callistus I, circa around 220 Common Era, or what we used to refer to as AD, Anno Domini, but lately we have in the last 20 or 30 years referred to CE, Common Era, and BCE, before Common Era, because BC used to be before Christ, and that is only applicable to Christians, and that's not appropriate. So we refer to the BCE, before Common Era, and CE being Common Era. So circa 220 Common Era was Pope Callistus I, and he just instituted 3 sets of Ember Days for harvesting, vintage, and seed time. And my research has not yielded much on this, but my hunch is that harvesting and vintage would be different timings. Harvesting was for crops. Vintage was for taking in the grapes. And then seed time, when we would plant seeds, and when we would plant the seeds for the grape season as well. So those 3 times. Pope Leo, in the 5th century, he preached a series of Embertide sermons, which really brought Embertide to the forefront of the church. And Embertides are seasons or days of fasting and prayer in preparation for those entering holy orders. Originally, that was what they were for. As I mentioned, the Book of Alternative Services has sort of widened them, maybe made them a bit more general to be used at times of prayer for the whole ministry of the church. But originally, and in some aspects, in some places in the Anglican communion around the world, this sense of Ember Days being a time of prayer and specific preparation for those about to be called to holy orders, so those being ordained as deacons or priests, was a specific period of prayer for them, because presumably those would be the seasons during which people would be ordained. Now, that has moved around a lot. We do ordinations when needed. Some times are more specific than others. When I was ordained, ordination to the diaconate to be what we call transitional deacon usually happened at Ascension or during Ascension Tide, which is, I believe, 40 days after Easter, so 10 days before Pentecost. And then we were usually ordained a priest 6 months later, in my era anyway, around about the Feast of St. Andrew, which is November 30th. I was ordained on the vigil of the Assumption of Mary, I believe. It was December 7th, and I like to joke that it was Pearl Harbor Day. But Rob was ordained on the 30th of November for St. Andrew's Day. So Ember Tides are seasons or days of fasting and prayer in preparation for those entering holy orders originally. In 1969, the Roman Catholic Church ordered that they may be prayers for various needs to be determined by the regional conferences of bishops. So they stopped being specifically about ordination and became times of special prayer that the bishops would call their congregations or their dioceses to. So that's what Ember Days are. And it's interesting because you think about the embers, and I think about the dying fire, the embers of a dying fire. But then a person that I knew when I was in my former parish in Halifax at St. James, when he took the confirmation class, I'm a big fan of the priest teaching the confirmation class, but I inherited a model where a parishioner did that. So he was telling them about faith. And that you can have faith and you go along through your life and you're confirmed and your faith is on fire and everything's great. And then, life happens and you get older and you have maybe go off to school, get married, have kids, and something happens and your faith doesn't die, but it's kind of in the background. It's not really, stirring up so much. But you can take like that little bit of faith. There's still a little bit of heat in there. There's still a little bit of the spark in there. Like when you take the ember from a dying fire, you can take an ember and put it with new kindling, with newer dried wood, of course, and you can start a new fire. And so something in that, one of the things I read in researching this talked about this ember of the dying fire. I think it's probably meant to be more of being able to kindle a new fire, that when we take the embers from the fires of those priests, for instance, for ordination, those priests who have gone before us, who encourage us, who challenge us, to stir us up into our calling, into really considering what we are called to do when we are ordained, that when we take that new ember and light it and bring it and introduce it to another pile of sticks and paper, and we can start a new fire that will grow and grow and grow and become a great fire. I think it's kind of like the whole pandemic interest in sourdough starter. I don't know about you here, but in Ontario there was a big movement about starting your own sourdough and then keeping the starter, and how people have had the starter for generations to create more bread and more sourdough starter. I didn't try that myself. I just prefer just to use good old fashioned bread flour and yeast to make my bread. But it's the same idea, I think, that you're taking something from something old and ancient and something that has been used before and seems to have no life left in it, and you bring it in, introduce it to something new, and it begins a whole new, brand new life. And I wonder if maybe that's what those Ember Tide days are for, those seasons right before Christmas, right in the beginning of Lent, after Pentecost, when we're entering into a long season of kind of ordinariness and humdrum, ho-hum, plodding through like 15, 16, 20 weeks of normal, and then getting to the fall when we start something new again. Maybe that's what those Ember Tide seasons are about. The readings and prayers, the collects, are about really starting us up, getting something burning within us again, relighting that fire, reigniting the fire of faith in us. Now, I did say earlier I would talk to you about Pentecost and Whitsunday. And in lots of churches, I don't know about out here, but in lots of churches, the season of Pentecost is sometimes referred to as the season of Trinity. They overlap a little bit. They overlap a lot, but they don't start at the same time. Pentecost season starts at Pentecost, which used to be called Whitsunday. And I thought there must be some amazing, theological reason for that. And it really comes from something as simple, as the color whites. Or in the early church, people would be baptized, brand new Christians. They wouldn't be babies, they would be grown-ups. They would be baptized into the church at Easter, at the Easter Vigil, actually. And then this whole season of Pentecost would be a season of newness and joy and wonderment for them. And people would often wear white to worship in that wonderful, beautiful season of the beginning of their new relationship with Christ. And so this habit of people wearing white, Whitsunday, that came from there. But also, Pentecost used to be a traditional day of baptism. And so people would wear white for their baptism. So hence, in early Christianity, Whitsunday then gets shortened up in our Church of England stuff to Whitsunday. Whitsunday. So for a long time in our church in Canada, that 50th day, that big Sunday, that 50th day after Easter, when we hear about all of the disciples or all the apostles speaking in tongues that they'd never known before, so that everyone in the world could understand the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news, that was referred to as Whitsunday. And since I've been growing up, so in the past 30 or 40 years, I'm 49, so probably in at least the last 35 years, it has traditionally now become known as Pentecost, the Sunday of Pentecost. So for those of you who are old school, we'll remember Whitsunday for you on Pentecost and then you can celebrate your Ember Days. So thank you to the parishioner who asked me, what does that mean? Because I didn't know, and now I know something else. So if you have questions about what things mean, let me know. Comment or call me, email me, because I love to learn things, and if I have to do a little bit of legwork, that's okay. And I'm totally okay with saying, I don't know, I'll try to find out. So you have a wonderful day. Enjoy your Wednesday, and I will see you tomorrow with Church at Home with Rachel and Dude, and we'll talk about meditating on Scripture. God bless everybody. Stay safe, stay home, wear your mask if you go out. Have a wonderful day.